In 2008, the British cycling team just completely obliterated the competition at the Beijing
Oh,
Olympics.
yeah, it was wild. They took home, what, like 60% of the gold medals?
Exactly, 60% of the gold medals available in track cycling, and then 4 years later, they set 9 Olympic records.
Right. And 7 world records. Plus all those Tour de France victories.
Yeah, 5 of those in 6 years. I mean, you'd think they had some kind of secret super serum or like a massive scientific revolution behind the scenes.
They really didn't. That's the crazy part.
Right. They achieved this unprecedented dominance by figuring out the best way to wash their hands.
Yeah, and testing different massage gels.
And painting the inside of their equipment truck stark white. It's just insane.
It is, but I mean, we are so conditioned to expect transformation to be this loud, dramatic thing.
Oh, totally. Like a movie montage.
Exactly. The cinematic montage where you decide to overhaul your life, the upbeat music kicks in, you sweat in a gym for 2 minutes of screen time, and boom, you cross the finish line.
But human psychology just does not operate on movie montage logic.
No, not at all.
So, welcome to our deep dive. Today, we are going to crack the absolute code of behavior change.
We really are.
If you are listening to this right now, yes, you, and you've ever wondered why it is so maddeningly difficult to stick to a new routine, you are in the right place.
Because we've all been there.
Oh, absolutely. Our mission today is to pull apart the fundamental building blocks of human potential, and we're relying on the groundbreaking framework from James Clear's huge bestseller, Atomic Habits.
It's such a brilliant source. We are basically replacing the illusion of the massive leap, the mathematics of the 1% rule.
Right, and we're going to explore the shift from goal setting to system building.
Plus, diving really deep into the psychology of identity change.
And of course, giving you the intensely practical 4 laws of behavior change. I have to admit, I am naturally so curious about this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I am definitely that person who sets a massive, intimidating goal on January 1st.
Let me guess. The marathon runner resolution.
Every single year. And by January 14th, the alarm goes off at 5 in the morning, it's freezing outside, and my grand resolution just completely evaporates.
Right, it just vanishes.
Why does our motivation do that? Why does it just disappear so quickly?
Well, the answer isn't that you lack willpower.
It's not.
No. And it's not that you're somehow fundamentally flawed in your character.
That is honestly a relief to hear.
I mean, over the course of this deep dive, we're going to synthesize the evolutionary biology and the neuroscience that explains exactly why our brains act the way they do.
Because we have to work with the brain's natural wiring.
Exactly. We need to work with those neurological tendencies rather than constantly exhausting ourselves fighting against them.
Okay, so before we can even touch the mechanics of how to change a habit, the sources make it explicitly clear that we have to redefine what progress even looks like.
Right. We have to completely shift our perspective.
We're almost always fixated on the macro, right? Like the 50 pounds we want to lose or the $1 million we want to make.
But we need to zoom all the way in to the microscopic level.
The mathematics of transformation. This introduces the 1% rule.
Which is such a powerful concept. The core premise is that habits are the compound interest of self-improvement.
Compound interest. So it's not just linear.
No, and that's the thing. The 1% rule is deeply rooted in exponential growth, which the human brain is notoriously terrible at comprehending.
Oh, we are so bad at it. We just think linearly.
Right. If I walk one step, I move one pace forward. If I do X, I will immediately get Y.
But compounding is an entirely different beast.
It really is. The math laid out here dictates that if you can get just 1% better at something every single day for 1 year,
Just 1%.
yeah, you do not just end up 365% better. Because of the nature of compounding, your previous gains act as the baseline for your new gains.
So you end up, what, almost 38 times better?
Exactly. 37.8 times better than when you started.
37 times better. Not 37%. That is a massive, almost incomprehensible multiplier for such a tiny daily effort.
It's exponential. But there's a dark side to this mathematical reality, too.
Right, it goes the other way.
Yes. Conversely, if you get just 1% worth each day for 1 year, you decline nearly all the way down to a baseline of 0.
Wow. So the daily choices we make, they seem incredibly insignificant in the moment.
Totally. Like eating a nutrient-dense meal versus fast food.
Or reading 10 pages of a book versus scrolling short-form videos for an hour.
On any given Tuesday, making the slightly better choice or the slightly worse choice has absolutely no visible impact on your life.
You don't look in the mirror on Wednesday and see a new person.
Exactly. But over time, those atomic-sized choices accumulate. They compound into something vastly larger than the sum of their parts.
Which brings us right back to Dave Brailsford and the British cycling team.
Such a perfect example of this.
Because prior to him taking over in the early 2000s, British cycling had been the laughingstock of the cycling world for nearly a century.
Oh, they were terrible.
Hmm.
They had won only a single gold medal at the Olympics since 1908.
And they had never won a Tour de France, not once.
It was so abysmal that top bicycle manufacturers actually refused to sell gear to the British team.
Wait, really? They wouldn't even sell them bikes?
Yeah, they were terrified of the negative association. They didn't want their high-end brands associated with consistent losers.
That is rough.
Yeah.
So it was this notoriously underperforming organization stuck in a chronic state of failure.
And when Brailsford came in, he didn't demand a massive influx of cash to buy better athletes.
He didn't implement a brutal new training regime either.
No. Instead, he introduced a surprisingly quiet strategy that he called the aggregation of marginal gains.
The aggregation of marginal gains, let's unpack that. His entire philosophy was to break down every single conceivable component that goes into riding a bicycle.
Right, literally everything.
And then improve each one of those individual components by just 1%.
And they got obsessively, almost clinically granular with this.
They absolutely did. They started with the obvious mechanical tweaks, like redesigning the bike seats to make them slightly more aerodynamic.
And rubbing alcohol on the tires to get a marginally better grip on the track.
They even had riders wear electrically heated overshorts to maintain optimal muscle temperature while waiting to race.
But what's fascinating here is how far they took this outside of just the immediate mechanics of the bikes themselves.
Right, they looked at the whole ecosystem of the athlete.
They tested different types of massage gels to see which specific chemical composition led to the fastest muscle recovery.
And they hired a surgeon to come in and teach the riders the absolute best way to wash their hands.
Just to reduce the statistical probability of catching a cold during competition season.
And the mattresses. They figured out the specific type of pillow and mattress that led to the best night's sleep for each individual rider.
Based on their body type and sleeping posture.
And they literally packed those exact mattresses up and brought them to hotels on the road, so the riders never had a suboptimal night of sleep.
And we can't forget the truck.
Oh yeah, painting the entire inside of the team's maintenance truck stark white.
Right, so the mechanics could spot any little bits of ambient dust that might otherwise go unnoticed.
Because dust could get into the finely tuned chains and gears and degrade the aerodynamics by a fraction of a percent.
Individually, these are microscopic adjustments. They seem almost ridiculous to an outside observer.
But the results speak for themselves. 66 Olympic and Paralympic gold medals over a 10-year span.
It is the definitive proof of concept for the 1% rule. Excellence is not a singular event.
It's the systemic accumulation of small marginal advantages.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because I hear the math, and the British cycling story is amazing, but my brain just isn't buying it for my own life.
How so?
Well, if the math is so simple, like just do one tiny thing better today, why do I almost always give up on my new routines by day 14?
It's frustrating, I know.
It's like financial investing. Putting away $5 a day feels entirely useless in the moment.
Right, you check your bank account the next morning, and you're still not rich.
So you stop, you go buy the expensive coffee instead. But 20 years later, that $5 a day could be a massive index fund portfolio.
Yeah.
Why are our brains so fundamentally terrible at waiting for the payout?
We have to look at this through the lens of an evolutionary mismatch.
Okay, an evolutionary mismatch.
Yeah. The human brain, specifically the older regions like the basal ganglia and the amygdala, evolved in what evolutionary biologists call an immediate return environment.
Meaning everything was right now.
Right. For the vast majority of human history, hundreds of thousands of years as hunter-gatherers, every choice our ancestors made had an immediate, tangible impact.
Like finding food.
Exactly. You find a bush with berries, you eat them, you immediately satiate your hunger, you spot a predator, you run away, you immediately secure your physical survival.
So we are hardwired to want the berry right now.
Precisely. Our neurological hardware was painstakingly optimized over millennia to highly value immediate rewards over long-term, abstract ones.
But today, we live in a drastically different paradigm.
Yes, a delayed return environment. Most of the critical choices we make in modern society will not benefit us for weeks, months, or even decades.
Like going to the gym. You go today, you don't step on the scale tomorrow and see a 20-pound weight loss.
Or saving money for retirement in your 20s. You won't touch a dime of it for 40
You
years.
study for an exam, the grade comes weeks later, the degree comes years later.
Our brains are essentially crying out for immediate neurochemical satisfaction. But modern success requires operating in a delayed time frame.
So because we cannot see the immediate visceral results of our 1% improvements,
The primitive parts of our brain classify the effort as a waste of energy.
and we abandon the compounding process.
Exactly.
This connects so perfectly to a concept from the sources called the plateau of latent potential.
Also known by its much less affectionate name, the Valley of Disappointment.
The Valley of Disappointment. I love that. And James Clear uses this brilliant analogy of an ice cube to explain the physics of invisible progress.
It's such a great visual.
So picture an ice cube sitting on a table in a freezing room. You can see your breath. It's 25 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
You start slowly heating the room up 26, 27, 28 degrees.
You're putting in all this energy, all this continuous heat.
And you are staring at the ice cube, and it is just sitting there. Nothing is happening. 29, 30, 31. Still absolutely nothing.
You might look at that situation and scream, "This is useless."
Right. My effort is having absolutely zero effect on this block of ice.
But then you hit 32 degrees.
And the ice cube finally begins to melt.
The crucial underlying mechanism to understand here is that the thermal energy applied from 25 to 31 degrees was not wasted.
It was simply being stored.
Right. In physics, this is a phase transition. The energy was working to weaken the molecular bonds of the water.
It just hadn't reached the critical threshold to physically change the state of the matter yet.
The energy was building up beneath the surface.
And I think that is exactly where so many of us get trapped in the valley of disappointment.
Oh, absolutely.
We put in the effort for a week or a month. We go to the gym, we eat the salads, and we don't see the scale move.
Or we put the $5 away and we don't see our bank account surge.
And we quit at 31 degrees. We abandon the habit right before the breakthrough.
And when people finally hit that 32-degree mark and the ice melts, the outside world looks at them and calls them an overnight success.
Because they only see the sudden transformation.
Exactly. They're entirely blind to the months or years of unseen heating that preceded it.
So if the core reason we quit is because we are too intensely fixated on looking for that delayed breakthrough,
If we're just staring at the ice cube,
Yeah.
agonizing over why it hasn't melted yet,
the logical solution is to stop looking at the finish line altogether.
we need to shift our entire cognitive focus to the machinery that produces the heat. We must transition from the macro to the micro.
Which brings us to the structural architecture of change, the profound difference between systems and goals.
This is a massive paradigm shift.
It really is. I mean, from the time we are in grade school, we are conditioned to set goals. Lose 20 pounds, write a novel, get a promotion.
But the source material argues that goals are actually deeply flawed.
And sometimes even detrimental if what you truly want is long-term, sustainable change.
Clear makes a razor-sharp distinction here. Goals are about the specific results you want to achieve.
While systems are about the daily processes that lead to those results.
Right, like if you were a basketball coach, your goal might be to win a national championship.
But your system is the way you recruit players, how you manage your assistants, the drills you run in practice.
The framework outlines 4 specific structural problems with being overly goal-oriented.
The first one is the issue of shared ambition among competitive agents.
Right. Think about any competitive environment. The Olympics, a corporate market, a job interview.
The winners and the losers all have the exact same goal.
Exactly. Every single sprinter on the starting line wants the gold medal. Every single candidate in the waiting room wants the job.
Therefore, the goal itself cannot be the variable that accounts for success.
It suffers from survivorship bias. We only listen to the winner talk about their goals.
Ignoring the fact that the losers had the exact same ones. So the true differentiator must be the system of continuous improvement.
The goal is just the entry ticket to the game. It's not the thing that separates you.
The second problem is the illusion of momentary change.
This one is so relatable.
Let's say you have a chaotic, messy room, and you set a firm goal to clean it. You summon a massive burst of motivation, you spend 3 hours scrubbing and organizing.
And boom, you've achieved your goal. You have a clean room for the afternoon.
But if you haven't changed the underlying sloppy habits that led to the messy room in the first place,
If your system is still to throw your clothes on the floor when you come home,
then 2 weeks later, you're going to be staring at a messy room again.
You treated a surface-level symptom, but you completely ignored the disease.
Which is exactly why solving problems at the level of results is nothing more than a temporary fix. You are perpetually treating the output while ignoring the input.
You have to solve problems at the level of systems.
Okay, so the third problem with goals is how they actively conflict with sustained human fulfillment.
Yeah, goal setting inherently creates a deferred happiness model in the brain.
It establishes this binary either conflict, like
Right.
I will finally allow myself to be happy when I lose the weight.
Or I will consider myself successful when I get the promotion.
You are literally placing yourself in a constant, agonizing state of pre-success failure.
You are perpetually not enough day after day until you cross this entirely arbitrary finish line.
And that takes a severe neurochemical toll. It strips the joy out of the daily process, replacing it with persistent anxiety.
And finally, the fourth problem is the post-achievement yo-yo effect.
Oh man, think about what happens to a vast majority of marathon runners the week after they finally cross the finish line.
They completely stop running.
They put their shoes in the closet and sit on the couch.
Because if all of your psychological drive and hard work is tethered exclusively to a singular specific goal,
What is left to push you forward once that goal has been achieved?
the structural motivation evaporates overnight.
This is why you see students stop reading books the moment they pass their final exam.
Or dieters gain all the weight back the moment they hit their target number.
Yeah.
The structure vanishes.
The ultimate mantra the book uses here is so incredibly powerful. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems.
It's brilliant.
I look at this like drafting a blueprint versus actually pouring concrete. You can sit in an office for months drawing the most beautiful blueprint for a skyscraper. That's your goal.
But you can't live inside a blueprint.
Exactly. You eventually have to go out into the mud and pour the concrete, lay the bricks, build the scaffolding. That's the system. But let's look at the other side of the coin for a second. If I only focus on pouring concrete without a blueprint, I might end up building a circular wall that traps me.
That's a fair point.
How do you steer a ship without a destination? Are we suggesting that goals are completely useless and we should just wander aimlessly?
Not at all, and making that distinction is vital. The synthesis of this concept is that goals are entirely necessary for setting direction.
You absolutely need the blueprint to know where to pour the concrete.
You need to know which way to steer the ship to avoid the rocks. But systems are essential for making progress.
The purpose of a goal is to win the game. The purpose of a system is to continue playing the game indefinitely.
True long-term thinking is essentially goalless thinking.
It's not about any single finite accomplishment. It's about committing to an infinite cycle of endless refinement.
Exactly.
So if systems are the daily processes that drive us forward, we have to ask the next logical question: what fuels the system?
And the sources lead us to a really profound psychological answer.
To change the system, you have to fundamentally change the operator of the system.
You have to change your underlying beliefs about yourself.
This brings us to the ontology of habits and what Clear terms identity-based change.
This is arguably one of the most profound psychological insights of the entire framework.
It really is. It posits that behavioral modification operates on three distinct concentric levels.
Visualized like the layers of an onion. The outermost layer is outcomes. This is concerned with changing your results.
Like losing weight, publishing a book, winning a race.
Right. The middle layer is processes. This is concerned with changing your habits and systems.
Implementing a new gym routine, decluttering your desk.
But the core layer, the very center of the onion, is identity. This is concerned with changing your beliefs.
Your self-image, your worldview, your deep-seated judgments about yourself.
And the fundamental mistake almost everyone makes is that they try to change from the outside in.
They start with the outcome layer, like, I want to be skinny.
Then they move inward to the process layer. I will force myself to go on this strict, miserable diet.
But they never touch the core layer of identity. They still secretly see themselves as a person who loves junk food and actively hates exercise.
They are just forcing themselves to act differently for a few weeks.
They are trying to change their actions without ever addressing the underlying beliefs that generate those actions.
We have to examine the concept of cognitive dissonance here.
Oh yeah, cognitive dissonance.
The brain physically cannot tolerate a mismatch between identity and action. When you are trying to act out of alignment with your core identity, there is immense psychological friction.
You have to expend massive amounts of willpower to force the behavior.
And willpower is a rapidly depleting resource. But true, Lasting change happens from the inside out. It is identity-based.
Because when a behavior becomes a deeply integrated part of your identity, the internal friction disappears entirely.
You aren't forcing anything. You are simply acting in accordance with who you are.
There is this brilliant, subtle example in the book of two people trying to quit smoking. Someone walks up and offers them a cigarette.
The first person declines and says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit."
Right, which sounds like a perfectly reasonable, healthy response.
But what are they actually saying beneath the surface?
They still identify as a smoker who is currently trying to be something else.
They are hoping their behavior will magically change while their core beliefs remain exactly the same.
But the second person declines the cigarette by saying, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker."
It is a microscopic shift in vocabulary, but a massive shift in ontology.
That second person no longer identifies with the habit at all. They are not restricting themselves.
A non-smoker doesn't need to summon heroic amounts of willpower to turn down a cigarette.
Because smoking is simply not a part of their self-concept, the behavior naturally aligns with the identity.
Exactly.
So the million-dollar question becomes, how do you actually change your identity? You can't just snap your fingers and believe something new.
The book offers a two-step process for this. Step 1. Decide the type of person you want to be. Step 2. Prove it to yourself with small wins.
And this is where the 1% rule comes roaring back into the picture. Every single action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become.
The concept of behavioral voting is incredibly empowering because it removes the paralysis of perfectionism.
Writing one single paragraph on a Tuesday morning does not immediately turn you into a Pulitzer-winning author.
But it casts one undeniable vote for the identity of "I am a writer."
Taking the stairs instead of the elevator casts a vote for "I am a healthy person."
Clear talks about a friend who lost 100 pounds simply by asking herself one single question all day long.
What would a healthy person do?
Right. Would a healthy person take a cab 4 blocks, or would they walk?
Would a healthy person order a massive burrito for lunch or a salad? She just kept casting tiny individual votes.
Until the sheer weight of the evidence made it her reality.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I hear you on casting votes, but my brain isn't stupid.
What do you mean?
If I'm 100 pounds overweight, haven't exercised in a decade, and I look in the mirror and say I am an athlete, my brain knows I'm lying.
Right.
It feels like toxic positivity. How is this not just faking it till you make it?
That's a very common and highly valid critique, but it requires us to parse out the difference between empty affirmations and empirical evidence.
Okay.
It is not faking it if you are actively providing undeniable physical evidence to your brain.
So you aren't just reciting hollow mantras in a mirror while sitting on the couch.
Exactly. You are physically changing your behavior in reality. One single push-up doesn't give you a six-pack, it's true.
But it is an objective piece of evidence, a real physical vote that you are acting like an athlete in that specific moment.
What self-perception theory and psychology tells us is that our beliefs follow our behavior just as much as our behavior follows our beliefs.
We observe our own actions and infer our identity from them.
By accumulating these small, undeniable pieces of behavioral evidence, you gradually rewrite the internal narrative.
You aren't lying to yourself. You are actively building a new truth through continuous action.
The evidence is the key. You have to literally show your brain the receipts.
Okay, so now that we understand that we need to cast these votes for our new identity, we need a highly practical system to make sure we actually show up to the ballot box every day.
We need an architectural framework.
And this brings us into the actual mechanics of the brain, the habit loop, and James Clear's first law of behavior change.
Let's break down the neurological loop first, because it is the engine of all human behavior.
Every single habit you have follows a 4-step neurological pattern.
Cue, craving, response, and reward.
The cue triggers your brain to initiate a behavior.
It's a piece of sensory information, a smell, a time of day, a notification ping that predicts a reward.
The craving is the underlying motivational force.
And it's vital to understand that you don't crave the habit itself. You crave the change in internal state it delivers.
You don't crave smoking a cigarette, right? You crave the feeling of stress relief.
Right. The response is the actual physical behavior you perform,
And finally, the reward is the end goal.
which satisfies the craving and tells your basal ganglia, hey, that action solved our problem. Remember this neural pathway for next time.
Cue, craving, response, reward. And James Clear maps his 4 laws of behavior change directly onto these 4 steps.
It gives us a manipulation manual, basically.
The first law, which deals exclusively with the cue, is make it obvious.
And the inversion of this law for breaking bad habits is make it invisible.
Because the primary catalyst for any behavioral change is simple awareness.
We do so much of our daily routines on sheer autopilot that we don't even consciously realize the cues that are triggering
You
us.
fundamentally cannot change a habit you do not notice.
This is why the framework suggests starting with a diagnostic tool called a habit scorecard.
You literally sit down and write out your entire daily routine, step by step, from the exact moment you open your eyes.
Wake up, turn off alarm, check phone, go to bathroom, weigh myself, take a shower, brush teeth, make coffee.
And you audit each micro action by marking it with a plus for a positive habit, a minus for a negative habit, or an equal sign for a neutral habit.
It's entirely about dragging the unconscious routines into the harsh light of the conscious mind.
There's a fascinating technique mentioned in the sources used by Japanese railway workers called the point-and-call system.
Oh, love this one.
The conductors and train operators in Japan literally physically point at different signals, dials, and tracks and verbally call out their status.
Signal is green, speed is 80, doors are closed.
To a Western observer, it sounds almost ridiculous, but studies show it reduces human error by up to 85%.
Because it forces the brain out of its dangerous autopilot mode and engages the conscious observing mind.
We need to do that with our own lives to catch our cues. Pointing at the pantry and saying out loud, I am reaching for a sugary cookie right now, even though I am not hungry.
Exactly. Once you have established that baseline awareness, you can start aggressively engineering new cues.
One of the most heavily researched strategies for this is called an implementation intention.
Studies have shown that if you vaguely tell yourself, I'm going to exercise more this week, your chances of actually doing it are dismal.
But if you fill out a specific formula, I will do behavior at this time in this location, your follow-through skyrockets.
I will run for 20 minutes at 7 a.m. in the neighborhood park.
You are giving your brain a highly specific, undeniable cue. You are removing the friction of decision fatigue.
When 7 a.m. hits, you don't have to burn cognitive energy deciding what to do. The decision was already preloaded.
And you can take that preloading even further with a technique called habit stacking.
This actually leverages a fascinating psychological concept known as the Diderot effect.
Dinesh Diderot lived in poverty his whole life until he received a large sum of money and bought a beautiful, luxurious scarlet robe.
Suddenly, surrounded by his old shabby furniture, the robe looked out of place, so he bought a new rug.
Then a new desk, then new chairs.
The Diderot effect essentially states that obtaining one new thing creates a spiral of interconnected consumption.
Behaviors and purchases don't happen in a vacuum. They are interconnected ecosystems.
Habit stacking uses this natural interconnectedness to our advantage.
The formula is, after my current habit, I will do my new habit.
So let's say you already have a deeply ingrained, unbreakable habit of brewing a pot of coffee every single morning.
You stack your new desired habit directly on top of it. After I press the start button on the coffee maker, I will immediately meditate for 1 minute.
You are effectively piggybacking on the robust neural pathways that have already been strongly established in your brain.
But the most powerful application of the first law isn't just about scheduling or stacking, it's about environment design.
The sources argue compellingly that environment matters far more than motivation.
We mentally assign our habits to the physical locations in which they occur. The context itself becomes the cue.
So if you want to eat more apples, don't hide them in the crisper drawer at the bottom of your fridge where they go to die.
Put them in a giant, bright bowl right in the dead center of your kitchen counter. Make them blazingly obvious.
If you want to practice guitar, don't leave it locked in a black case shoved in the back of your closet.
Buy a stand and put the guitar right in the middle of your living room between the couch and the TV.
You are physically laying out a red carpet for your good habit.
But it goes the other way too, right? Making bad habits invisible. I think of environment design as intentionally laying out a minefield for your bad habits.
That's a great way to put it.
But let's pause and look at this realistically. What about plain old self-control?
Like willpower.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Why can't I just be an adult and resist a cookie sitting on the counter? Are we just giving up on the concept of willpower entirely and treating ourselves like lab rats?
That is a pervasive and incredibly damaging myth in our culture. The myth of the highly disciplined, stoic individual who just white-knuckles their way through endless temptation.
It's what we're all taught to aspire to.
But behavioral science completely dismantles this narrative. Extensive studies on people who report the highest levels of self-control reveal something highly counterintuitive.
They actually use their willpower the least.
Exactly. They don't possess a magical, limitless reservoir of resistance. They simply design their lives and environments so they are subjected to far fewer temptations in the first place.
It requires massive, exhausting amounts of cognitive energy to constantly, actively resist a cue that is sitting right in front of your face.
It's ego depletion. It drains your battery.
Precisely. Willpower is a heavily depletable resource. Every time you look at the cookie and say no, you are burning glucose in your prefrontal cortex.
By optimizing your environment, by making the cues of your bad habits completely invisible, you remove the need to use willpower altogether.
If the cookies aren't in the pantry, you don't need an ounce of discipline to avoid eating them at 9 p.m.
Out of sight, genuinely, neurologically, means out of mind.
Okay, so making a cue obvious ensures it gets noticed by the brain. But merely noticing a guitar in the living room isn't enough to actually make you pick it up.
The cue has to trigger a genuine desire.
And that brings us to the second law of behavior change: make it attractive.
And its inversion for dismantling bad habits. Make it unattractive.
This law deals heavily with the craving stage of the habit loop.
To truly understand this, we have to look closely at the neuroscience of the dopamine loop.
Dopamine is the neurotransmitter most heavily associated with reward, pleasure, and motivation.
But what neuroscientists have discovered through brain imaging is that dopamine spikes do not just occur when you experience pleasure.
They actually spike highest during the anticipation of pleasure.
The anticipatory spike is what drives the motor functions to pursue the reward.
It's the buildup. It's why looking forward to a tropical vacation for 3 months often feels almost as intensely good as the vacation itself.
The anticipation is the engine.
It is the craving, the anticipation of the internal state change that initiates the action.
Therefore, if we want to build a good habit that requires effort, we must figure out how to chemically hack the brain to make the anticipation highly attractive.
The sources mention a fantastic, highly practical strategy for this called temptation bundling.
It's essentially linking an action you want to do with an action you need to do.
There's a brilliant study cited in the book conducted by Katie Milkman at the University of Pennsylvania.
She took a group of people who struggle to exercise and told them they were only allowed to listen to highly addictive, thrilling audiobooks.
Like The Hunger Games or intense true crime mysteries, but only while they were physically exercising at the gym.
They systematically bundled the intense temptation of the narrative cliffhanger with the required physical effort of the workout.
And the results were staggering. People actually started looking forward to going to the gym.
And even staying longer on the treadmill because it was the only time they were allowed to find out what happened next in their book.
They artificially made the hard habit inherently attractive.
But there's another massive, perhaps even more powerful component to making things attractive, and it involves the people we surround ourselves with.
The undeniable power of culture.
Human beings are deeply social, tribal creatures. We are fundamentally driven by a need to fit in and earn the approval of our peers.
We naturally, often unconsciously, imitate the habits of 3 distinct groups of people.
First, the close our family, our friends, our immediate colleagues.
Second, the broader societal norms and cultural expectations of our era.
And third, the powerful individuals with high status, prestige, and success whom we admire.
So if you want to build a reading habit, one of the most effective things you can possibly do is join a book club.
Because suddenly, reading isn't just a solitary, isolated chore that you have to force yourself to do.
It becomes a social activity that earns you approval, belonging, and connection with the close.
If you want to run a marathon, you join a running group.
You are intentionally surrounding yourself with a culture where your desired behavior is the completely normal baseline behavior.
But, looking at this critically, what does this all mean for our individuality?
If we just absorb the habits of whoever is around us, are we really just sheep following whatever tribe we happen to be dropped into?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to recognize the harsh reality of evolutionary psychology.
For our hunter-gatherer ancestors on the savannah, fitting in with the tribe was not a matter of social anxiety or wanting to be popular.
It was a matter of literal life and death survival.
If you didn't conform to the tribe's habits and norms, you were ostracized, and a lone human on the savannah quickly became prey.
We cannot simply turn off this deeply ingrained, millions of years old evolutionary wiring that makes us crave social acceptance.
But we can outsmart it. We don't have to be mindless sheep.
We can exercise our agency and individuality by deliberately and consciously curating the tribes and environments we immerse ourselves in.
You get to proactively choose which group's norms you want to adopt as your own.
That is a phenomenal reframe. You choose your flock.
And speaking of reframing, the book talks about a simple linguistic mindset shift to make hard tasks more attractive.
It's changing one single word in your internal monologue.
Yeah.
Changing, I have to do this, to I get to do this.
You don't have to cook dinner for your family. You get to cook dinner and provide nourishment for the people you love.
You have to go for a run. You get to go for a run to build your cardiovascular strength.
It shifts the entire cognitive perspective from a heavy burden to an opportunity.
It fundamentally alters the internal narrative, which directly impacts the craving stage of the loop, reducing the friction of initiation.
Okay, so we've made the cue blazingly obvious. We've made the craving highly attractive.
Now we have to actually execute the physical behavior.
Because human nature naturally, inevitably defaults to the path of least resistance, we have to fiercely remove the friction of execution.
This brings us to the third law. Make it easy. And its necessary inversion for bad habits. Make it difficult.
This law addresses the response stage of the habit group.
And the most critical, eye-opening distinction Clear makes in this section is the stark difference between motion and action.
Motion is researching the best possible diet plan, reading endless reviews for the perfect running shoes, or drafting a massive outline for a book you want to write.
Action is actually eating the salad, going for the run, or sitting down and writing the first terrible page.
Motion feels incredibly productive, but it produces absolutely no tangible outcome.
It's like having the most intricate, perfect blueprint for a house, but refusing to ever pour the concrete.
You can't live in a blueprint. There is a legendary study cited in the book about a university photography class that perfectly encapsulates this trap.
The professor divided the class into two distinct groups on the first day.
The quantity group was told their entire final grade would be based purely on the sheer number of photos they submitted. Submit 100 photos, get an A.
The quality group was told they only needed to submit one single photo for the entire semester.
But it had to be absolutely perfect, a masterpiece of composition and lighting to get an A.
And the results of this semester-long experiment perfectly illustrate the danger of getting trapped in motion versus taking action.
At the end of the term, the professor laid out all the photos.
The absolute best photos, the ones with the most creative composition, the best lighting, the deepest emotional resonance, all came from the quantity group.
The quality group spent the entire semester paralyzed in motion.
They theorized about lighting, they read books on composition, they stressed over the perfect shot.
And they ended up with highly mediocre, uninspired photos.
The quantity group just went out and took hundreds of photos.
They learned how lighting actually worked through trial and error. They honed their physical skills through sheer, messy action.
It proves definitively that the most effective form of learning is physical practice, not intellectual planning.
The quantity group benefited from neuroplasticity. Their brains physically adapted to the task through repetition.
And to ensure we actually engage in that practice, we have to ruthlessly obey the law of least effort.
Our brains are biologically wired to conserve energy at all costs.
Given two options, we will always unconsciously gravitate toward the option that requires the least amount of caloric and cognitive work.
So we have to intentionally manipulate the friction in our environments.
If you want to watch less television making a bad habit difficult, don't just turn it off with the remote and leave it on the coffee table.
Unplug the TV from the wall entirely, take the batteries out of the remote control, and put them in a drawer in another room.
You are drastically increasing the number of physical steps required to execute the bad habit.
By the time you walk to the drawer, dig out the batteries, walk back, and plug the heavy TV in, your brain has had enough time to interrupt the autopilot craving.
Conversely, for good habits, you must obsessively decrease the number of steps.
You prime your environment to make future actions the path of least resistance.
Laying out your gym clothes and shoes at the foot of your bed the night before drastically reduces the cognitive friction of waking up early in the cold.
Which brings us to perhaps the most famous viral tactic in the entire book, the 2-minute rule.
The rule states that when you start a new habit, it must be scaled down so it takes less than 2 minutes to do.
Read before bed becomes read one single page.
Do 45 minutes of yoga becomes take out my yoga mat and lay it on the floor.
Run 3 miles becomes tie my running shoes.
You are scaling the intimidating habit down into an incredibly easy, frictionless gateway habit.
But let's look at this skeptically. How does reading one single page or just tying my running shoes actually change my life?
I know it feels almost patronizing, like I'm playing a psychological trick on myself.
Right.
It is a profound psychological mechanism, but validating that skepticism is important because it does feel insignificant in the moment.
So what's the underlying science?
We have to look past the immediate physical output and look at the neuroscience of automaticity.
Habits are formed in the basal ganglia based on frequency of repetition, not the duration or intensity of the action.
The sheer relentless frequency of an action physically alters the neural pathways in your brain.
The book cites a famous neurological study of London taxi drivers who have to memorize the knowledge, the incredibly complex map of the entire city.
Brain scans showed that their hippocampi, the specific region of the brain associated with spatial memory, were significantly enlarged compared to non-taxi drivers.
Repeated action literally changes the brain's physical architecture.
So the sheer repetition of an act matters far more than how long you do it for.
The 2-minute rule works because of a fundamental law of habit building. You have to standardize a habit before you can optimize it.
You absolutely cannot improve a habit that doesn't exist yet.
By doing the ridiculously easy 2-minute version every single day, you are mastering the art of showing up.
You are establishing the neural pathway. You are casting a small, undeniable vote for your identity.
Once that pathway is established and the habit of simply showing up becomes automatic, then you have the foundation to expand it into a 30-minute workout.
Standardize before you optimize. You can't sculpt a statue until you actually have the block of clay in the room.
And for habits where you want to lock in good behavior for the distant future, the book suggests utilizing commitment devices.
This is where you make a conscious choice in the present that automates, restricts, or dictates your future actions.
Like setting up an automatic transfer from your checking account to your savings account on payday.
You don't have to rely on depleting your willpower to save money every month. The financial system does it for you.
You bought the high-quality mattress once, and it pays dividends in better sleep every single night for a decade.
You are actively engineering an environment of inevitability. You are taking your future self's willpower completely out of the equation.
So let's review where we are. We've made the habit obvious, we've made it attractive, and we've made it incredibly easy.
That structural combination practically guarantees that we will do the habit once.
But what guarantees we will do it again tomorrow and the next day? The brain needs a compelling reason to repeat the cycle.
And that is the fourth law of behavior change. Make it satisfying. And its inversion. Make it unsatisfying.
This final law is unique because it is the only one that deals with the outcome of the behavior rather than the initiation of it.
It is governed by what psychologists call the cardinal rule of behavior change. What is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided.
This is pure operant conditioning, and here is where we violently crash into that evolutionary mismatch again.
Because modern goals are almost entirely delayed. Return health, wealth, writing a book. We have to artificially manufacture immediate return rewards to attach to them.
We have to actively build a psychological bridge across the gap between the action taken in the present and the payoff we won't see until the future.
One of my absolute favorite examples from the book is the paperclip strategy.
Oh, I love this one. A young, aspiring sales rep had 2 glass jars on his desk every morning. One was filled with 120 paper clips, the other was completely empty.
Every single time he made a cold sales call, he physically moved one paperclip from the full jar to the empty jar.
He didn't stop working until all 120 paper clips were moved.
He was creating an immediate, satisfying, tactile visual reward for a grueling behavior that wouldn't yield actual financial commission checks for months.
It provides immediate visual proof of progress. This is the underlying neurological power of habit tracking.
Whether it's moving a paperclip, crossing a day off a physical wall calendar with a thick red marker, or checking a satisfying box in a digital app.
The act of tracking itself becomes an intrinsic reward.
It satisfies the brain's deep desire for immediate gratification and triggers a small hit of dopamine.
It's exactly like earning a high score in a video game.
You see that visual streak building up 5 days, 10 days, 20 days in a row, and suddenly your only goal becomes, don't break the chain.
You don't even care about the weight loss anymore. You just want to see the red X on the calendar.
But let's be real for a minute. Life happens. Chaos happens.
If I get sick or have a family emergency and miss 3 days at the gym, doesn't a habit tracker just make me feel terrible?
I look at that broken streak, I feel like a massive failure. The what the hell effect kicks in, and I just want to quit. the entire endeavor.
Doesn't the tracker become a psychological weapon against myself?
This raises a critical question, and it's a dangerous trap that many perfectionists and high achievers fall into. The all-or-nothing mentality.
The ultimate goal of habit tracking is not unbroken perfection, it's trajectory.
Clear introduces a vital forgiving concept here, the never miss twice rule.
Missing one day is a statistical accident. It happens to literally everyone. But missing twice is the genesis of a new bad habit.
So if you break down and gorge on a massive pizza on Friday night, it's not the end of the world. And your diet isn't ruined as long as you eat a healthy, balanced lunch on Saturday.
The key to long-term compounding is to reclaim the habit immediately, even if it has to be a severely scaled-down version.
If you are exhausted from traveling and can't do your full workout, do a 2-minute stretch in your hotel room.
It's not about the physical caloric burn of that single stretch. It's about ruthlessly affirming your identity.
You are casting a vote that says, I am the type of person who doesn't miss workouts, even when it's inconvenient.
You are maintaining the compound interest of the habit, protecting your baseline even on a bad day.
Mathematically, lost days hurt your compounding significantly more than successful days help it. So you must protect the baseline at all costs.
And for breaking bad habits, making them unsatisfying, we can use tools like habit contracts and accountability partners.
We artificially add immediate, painful social or financial consequences to our bad habits.
If you sign a legally binding contract with your friend that you owe them $50 every single time you smoke a cigarette.
The delayed, invisible health consequences of smoking suddenly have an immediate, highly painful financial consequence in the present moment.
It brilliantly utilizes our brain's natural aversion to immediate loss and social embarrassment to outsmart our physical craving for the bad habit.
Okay, so let's zoom all the way out. You've audited your life with the scorecard.
You've mastered the 4 laws. Your cues are obvious, your cravings are attractive, your actions are frictionless and easy, and your rewards are deeply satisfying.
Your habits are officially locked in and automatic. You're operating like a well-oiled behavioral machine.
But what happens next? How do you prevent yourself from getting profoundly bored?
How do you move from a beginner who has simply mastered showing up to a true elite master of your craft?
That is the crucial, often overlooked final phase.
Automaticity is the ultimate goal of habit formation. But paradoxically, it is also the enemy of true mastery.
When a behavior becomes fully automatic, our brain stops paying conscious attention to it. We coast, we hit a plateau.
To push past that and sustain mastery, we have to employ the Goldilocks rule.
The Goldilocks rule. Not too hard, not too easy, just right.
Exactly. Deep psychological research into flow states shows that human beings experience peak motivation when working on tasks that are right on the razor's edge of their current abilities.
If a task is too easy, we get bored and disengage.
If a task is wildly too difficult, we get frustrated, overwhelmed, and give up. We desperately need challenges of just manageable difficulty to stay engaged.
The book brings up the legendary comedian Steve Martin to illustrate this.
It tracks his incredible rise from performing to empty, silent clubs to eventually playing massive stadiums for 45,000 screaming people.
He didn't just write one great 5-minute comedy routine and repeat it endlessly on autopilot for 20 years.
Every single year, he painstakingly expanded his act by just 1 or 2 minutes.
He kept enough of his proven, guaranteed laughs in the set to keep his motivation high. The dopamine reward was still there.
But he added just enough new, untested material to push his creative limits and keep himself hyper-focused.
He operated perfectly on the edge of his abilities, and this requires constant, deliberate review and reflection.
The formula for mastery is habits plus deliberate practice equals mastery.
You establish the baseline habit, it becomes automatic, and then you intentionally introduce a new, slightly harder challenge to push the boundary further.
There's also an incredibly interesting point in the sources about the role of genetics in all this.
Clear says that our genes don't eliminate the need for hard work. Rather, they clarify what we should be working hard on.
You want to consciously choose the field of competition that aligns with your natural biological strengths.
There's a funny but brilliant story about Elizabeth Swiney. She was not a world-class, naturally gifted snowboarder, but she deeply wanted to reach the Olympics.
So she analyzed the system and found a loophole.
She competed in the women's halfpipe for Hungary, and during her qualifying runs, she literally just rode up and down the pipe without doing any complicated high-flying tricks.
She just made absolutely sure she never crashed.
Because the competitive field was so small in her specific category, and the other women attempted hard tricks and frequently crashed, she accrued enough points through sheer consistency to make it to the 2018 Winter Olympics.
She found a game where her specific limited physical abilities could still lead to massive success.
It highlights the vital importance of aligning your habits with your inherent context. Don't fight a battle you aren't equipped to win. Change the battlefield.
But returning to the idea of total automaticity, some people harbor a deep fear that by making everything in their life an engineered habit, life itself becomes robotic and sterile.
Yes. If everything from when I wake up to what I eat to when I exercise becomes an automatic, pre-programmed habit, don't we just become robots sleepwalking through our own lives?
Where is the spontaneity? Where is the joy, the art of living, if everything is just an engineered system of cues and rewards?
It's a completely valid philosophical concern, but the reality is exactly the opposite. Habits do not restrict your freedom, they actively create it.
Think about it. The people who do not have their foundational habits handled are the ones with the least amount of actual freedom.
If your financial habits are poor, you are constantly stressed about money and have no financial freedom.
If your health habits are poor, you are constantly battling lethargy or illness, and you have no physical freedom.
By offloading the basic, mundane mechanics of life paying bills, eating nutritious food, keeping a clean environment to the unconscious basal ganglia, you are actually freeing up your cognitive load.
You liberate your prefrontal cortex, your mental energy, to tackle higher-level creative challenges, to be truly spontaneous, and to find profound flow states in the things that matter most.
You are building an unbreakable concrete foundation so the rest of the house can be whatever beautiful, crazy, spontaneous architecture you want it to be.
Exactly.
Okay, let's take a deep breath and recap this incredible journey we've been on. We started by abandoning the crushing, toxic pressure of massive overnight goals.
We embrace the quiet, powerful mathematics of 1% compounding.
We learned that to truly permanently change, we have to stop focusing on the outcome and reshape our deepest identity.
Declaring, I am a reader, or I am an athlete, and casting small, daily behavioral votes to prove it to ourselves.
And we walked through architecting our physical environments using the 4 laws, making good habits obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying.
So that success literally becomes the path of least resistance. It is a comprehensive, scientifically backed blueprint for behavioral engineering.
But there is one final profound implication of this work that extends far beyond the individual, which I think is crucial to leave you with.
If every single action we take is a vote for our own identity, then it stands to reason that our collective habits must form the culture of our shared environments.
Think about your home, your family, your workplace, your community, and the habits you quietly permit, the habits you openly celebrate, the tiny routines you repeat daily in front of others.
They aren't just building your own isolated future. They are invisibly, relentlessly shaping the environment and, by extension, the identities of everyone around you.
The question to ponder is this: are the 1% changes you are making today creating a culture of excellence for the people you love?
You are not just the architect of your own life. You are a co-architect of the world you inhabit.
It all starts with 1%. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the mechanics of human potential.
Until next time, keep casting those votes and keep building the systems that let you play the game forever.
Take care, everyone.